I teased as we went to break. I mean, there's a lot of drama out there in the NFL quarterback space. And we talked yesterday quite a bit about Deshaun Watson, and I explained to you why I thought Deshaun Watson to the Denver Broncos could make a decent amount of sense. And really it boils down to the Denver Broncos consistently have not been able to find a quarterback in the draft ever since John Elway retired. And there's a lot of talk when we discuss the Miami Dolphins. Oh, by the way, how about Devontae Smith coming out and saying that he thought Mac Jones was a lot better quarterback than Tua? I was kind of surprised that he said that just because he played with both guys, and also because I don't think Mac Jones needs to get blown up that much. It seems like he's going to be a clear top half of the first-round pick regardless. But that makes me wonder about what they're going to do in Miami. Because if you go back and look at Tua, and I loved watching Tua play, but if you go look at the talent that he had at wide receiver now, I think that the Alabama Crimson Tide in 2019 had the most talented collection of wide receivers in the history of college football. They had, think about this for a minute, they had Jerry Jeudy, who was, I think, a top 10 pick. They had Henry Ruggs, who ran, nearly one of the fastest 40 times that's ever existed, also a first-round pick. They had Devontae Smith, who won the Heisman Trophy, the first wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy since Desmond Howard, all the way back in the year at Michigan. And they also had Jalen Waddle, who came back and played in the national title game and will also be a first-round wide receiver. They had 4 first-round wide receivers. And I'm telling you right now, I'm jotting down a note to myself because sometimes I start talking about a topic and I'm like, damn, that's a good topic. Tomorrow, I am going to talk about that quad of wide receivers and why there may be some uncertainty about Tua after his first year in Miami, partly because he was recovering from that severe hip injury, but also because he had the most talented wide receiver core in the history of college football. I believe that. I really do. But if you look right now at what that Alabama offense was capable of with Mac Jones without Tua, they didn't skip a beat at all. And so I thought that was an interesting comment that Devontae Smith made. I'm going to unpack it a little bit more tomorrow. I'm jotting down a note literally to myself as we are talking because I think it's such an interesting idea. But the most uncertain quarterback position outside of Deshaun Watson, who I think could make sense with the Denver Broncos, because the Denver Broncos are the West Coast version of the Miami Dolphins, a team that for a generation basically has been unable to find a replacement for their first ballot NFL Hall of Fame quarterback. Elway and Marino, and don't tell me that Peyton Manning counts because he was already a first ballot NFL Hall of Famer himself. Credit to John Elway for getting him to relocate to Denver for 4 years. But that's not the same thing as going out, drafting a quarterback, developing him, and having him turn into a big-time playmaker. So I could see both of those teams, Miami and Denver, getting involved in a big way over Deshaun Watson before it's all said and done. But outside of Deshaun, the biggest storyline, I think, at the quarterback position that is now left in the wake of Carson Wentz's trade, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, all that movement, is what are the Cowboys going to do with Dak? And I think we could almost do an entire show discussing what the Cowboys are going to do with Dak. But my position here going forward is I don't think the Cowboys can give Dak Prescott a multi-year deal. If you were listening to the show yesterday, we had Albert Breer on. And Albert Breer said something really interesting about Dak's contract. He said, look, he's going to cost him, if they franchise him, $37 million this year. Not a bad payday. I'd sign up for that salary. Going to cost him $37 million this year. Cost him over $30 million last year. And if they tried to franchise him a third time, it would cost them over $50 million. So you are talking about Dak Prescott, who the Cowboys didn't necessarily want to give $100 million, potentially being on track just from his 1-year salaries as a franchise-tagged player to make over $100 million in 3 years with the Dallas Cowboys. And potentially Dak is setting himself up for the Kirk Cousins treatment. If you remember what happened also in the NFC East with the Washington football team, they franchise tagged Kirk Cousins 2 straight years, and then he went and signed a monster deal with the Minnesota Vikings. And a lot of people out there said, my God, how well did Kirk Cousins play this in order to make as much money as he did? And I think there's an argument out there that Dak and Kirk Cousins are somewhat similar quarterbacks. In that, I mean, they are not top 5 guys, probably not top 10 guys. We could have an argument about that. Guys that are good, better than anybody else you could go find on the market, but not difference makers who you're going to be talking about as great quarterbacks for a decade or more, not Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks. Now, Dak's still young, but I think there's an analogy there with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is a Hall of Fame quarterback for purposes of his salary, and I don't blame him at all. As a capitalist, I want an athlete to make as much money as he can off his labor, just like I want to make as much money as I can off my labor. But the difference is Dak has now had a second surgery, and I don't think you can sign him to a long-term deal. I think you have to bring him back under the franchise tag and make him prove to you that he's still got the ability to play at an incredibly high level. And if you do that, I think what you are basically sending a message to Dak on is that you are acknowledging that you're still not sold he's your quarterback of the future. And if that happens at this point in time, if I'm Dak Prescott, I want to come back and prove I'm 100% healthy, but I'm also not interested in staying with the Dallas Cowboys going forward because we would have given them, me and my representation, ample times to take care of me like they took care of Amari Cooper, like they took care of so many different guys on that side of Zeke, on the offensive side of the ball. And you're not willing to pay me, who you drafted and got tons of work for almost no cost. They took care of Tyron Smith. They took care of everybody else on that offense. If I'm Dak, I'm saying, hey, man, I'm out. I'm not rolling with this anymore. I think the Cowboys and Dak Prescott are set up for an incredibly contentious offseason as we continue to roll forward.